Konnichiwa, senpai desu. Welcome to the Learn from the Pros series, where we delve into the techniques of professional anime illustrators on X and apply their techniques to our own. In today's video, let's talk about the illustrator that everyone loves, Mika Pikazo. Like Pikachu, Picazo sensei's art style has gone through 3 evolutionary progression. I actually started following her work when she was at her first stage. At this stage, her usage of high saturation triadic color palette was pretty well known among the art community. Many of you probably know her through her second stage, where she started incorporating a bunch of effects like halftones, noise effect, and chromatic aberration into her drawing. Her style at this stage often includes a mix of Harajuku fashion, bright triadic colors, and cool halftone effects, which makes her art stand out even more. And just recently, Picazo sensei reached her final form and officially joined Yoneyama sensei in the legendary Pokemon category. That's right, my fellow Magikarps, you too can be a legendary Pokemon one day. Oh wait, Gyarados is not legendary. Before I show you Picazo sensei's secret recipe, we have to understand the basics of her art. There are 7 elements and principles. These elements and principles shape how an artwork looks and feels, making each style unique. We'll focus on lines, colors, textures, contrast, emphasis, and patterns because they're key to Picazo's style. Based on my observation, Picazo's lines are thicker than those of other artists. To capture her style, you need to use different thicknesses when drawing lines. For example, look at this apple. The lines are plain and dull, right? But when we vary the thickness, the look completely changes. Picazo even erases some parts of the lines to make the apple's shape look more dynamic. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the apple. Can you see the difference? Try this technique in your own drawings and you'll be amazed. The main thing about Picazo's art style is how she uses 3 colors that are evenly spread out on the color wheel. This is called a triadic color palette. But don't just blindly stick to the theory. In Picazo's art, she doesn't always use the exact colors the theory suggests. For example, instead of using red, yellow, and blue, she might use blue, yellow, and green. And instead of yellow-green, blue-violet, and red-orange, she might use yellow-green, blue-violet, and red-violet. So don't worry about following the theory exactly. You can try swapping one of the colors and see how it looks. Playing around with colors is the most important thing to learn from Picazo's art. Mangakas have been using halftones for decades, so it's not really a mind-blowing technique. However, using halftones to add texture in digital painting is pretty big brain. Picazo combined traditional halftones with modern digital painting to create a unique style that works really well. In the upcoming copy painting study session, I'll teach you how to add the halftone effect to your drawings. An artist uses emphasis to make you focus on a specific spot. This spot is known as the focal point, and there are different ways to create it. Artists often use contrast to make detailed objects stand out, but she does it differently. In her portraits, the face is often the focal point, so she makes everything else detailed except the face, and this makes our eyes naturally go to the less detailed areas. I call this Mika Pikazo's reverse contrast technique. She adds lots of details to everything except the face, drawing inspiration from Harajuku fashion, but the wildness is toned down. She also uses other techniques like leading lines, filling the frame, and radical composition to create focal points. Picazo focuses a lot on composition, contrast, and focal points in her art. This teaches us how important it is to create a strong focal point in our drawings. To take her reverse contrast technique one step further, she uses patterns and repetitions, especially on things like band-aids, hairpins, or rings to add details to her characters. You can see this pattern technique in her full character illustrations too, where she repeats flowers, toys, and other items. To keep it simple, if you notice any empty space, try filling it with something that's already drawn in your drawing, but don't go overboard. Finally, let's discuss effects and filters. Picazo enjoys using 5 particular effects in her drawings: halftone, hard mix, noise, depth of field, and chromatic aberration. I'll skip explaining halftone since you already know about it. So if you look closely at Picasso's paintings, you will notice a bunch of unusual colors. This effect is achieved through hard mix, a technique I believe was developed by Picazo herself.
Really? What's your source, senpai?
The source is I made it the fuck up. Anyway, I'll show you how to do it later. Next, Picazo often applies noise or grain to her shading, and sometimes to the background. I believe this is to enhance the detail of the shading and to emphasize the clean part of the face even more. She also adds depth of field by blurring the edges of the portrait and sometimes the background, which strengthens the focal point. Lastly, she adds chromatic aberration as a final touch. Now that we have grasped the basics of Picazo sensei's art, let's copy paint one of her illustrations to understand her workflow and techniques. This is the illustration I'm going to copy paint today. Firstly, I begin by tracing the line art. I've noticed that the lines vary in thickness and some parts were erased. Here, I filled in the base color, aka the local color, for the skin, hair, eyes, clothes, and so on. In this illustration, Picazo used blue, yellow, and green instead of the usual red, yellow, and blue. This gives the art an unique appearance. She applied these colors to the main highlights of the character, such as the hair, eyes, plasters, hairpins, and earrings. The remaining items like the clothing and frills were filled with neutral colors like black and white. Now, let's discuss shading. Based on what I've seen from her Pixiv Speed drawings, Picazo keeps her layers very simple. They typically consist of a local color layer, followed by a shadow layer, then a terminator layer, and lastly, a highlight layer if needed. The shadow layer is where she applies all the shading to her character, including the core shadow, cast shadow, reflected light, and so on. Next, she creates a new layer specifically for the Terminator. Using a more saturated color, she paints the edge of the shadow to complete her shading process. For certain parts like the hair, she adds another layer for the highlights, and another layer for the individual hair strands. While copying the eye, I realized how special Picazo's eye painting technique is. She puts so much color into the eyes, yet all of them were able to blend so well together. Believe it or not, my original eye painting style was quite similar to hers, but it lacked the vibrancy. Now, I believe I have found the missing piece to my puzzle. After painting the eyes, the rest are the same process that we have discussed earlier. Local color layer, shadow layer, terminator layer, and finally, the highlight layer if needed. Nothing fancy, but it puts your basics and fundamentals to the test. Once the painting is done, we can finally move to the part everybody is waiting for, effects and filters. Let's start with the hard mix effect. Firstly, you have to merge all your drawing layers into one. Before that, I just want to put a disclaimer that these demonstrations were all done in Procreate, so I can't promise they will work for everyone. If you're using a different drawing program, you might need to try a different way to make these effects. The result can be different depending on what kind of software you're using too, so be careful. Okay, let's keep going. After that, go to the adjustments icon on your top left corner and select halftone. Swipe right to create your desired halftone size. Next, copy that layer and paste it on top of your hair layer. Remember to clip it. Change the layer to hard mix mode, then move it around like this. The whole process is quite random, so just move it around freely. Here, I erase some of the parts that I don't need. Next, use your smudge tool to blend the colors together. Perhaps it's because of the program or the smudge tool, but I found it challenging to achieve the exact same result as Picazo. Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop might be a better choice if you're really into this hard mix effect. Finally, adjust the opacity to your preference and ensure that the hard mix layer blends well with your hair. I did the same thing for the clothing and straps. This is how Picazo quickly adds those unique colors to her drawings. It's unusual but really interesting. If you've been wanting to try this effect in your own drawings, now you know the secret. Now let's talk about the second effect, the halftone effect. Firstly, create a new layer and choose your desired color. Then, go to the adjustments icon in the top left corner and select halftone. Swipe right to adjust the size of your halftone dots. After that, change the layer blending mode to multiply and adjust the opacity. And that's it. In the original painting, I noticed there's some halftone effect at the edge of the drawing, so I reopened the all-in-one layer and erased the middle part of the drawing, leaving the halftone effect at the edges. I believe this is Picazo's way of applying depth of field to enhance the focal point. Here, I tried different layer effects to see which one worked best, and I decided to go with the luminosity layer. It doesn't always turn out this way, just so you know. Next, we'll apply the noise grain effect. It might not be the most efficient method, but I merged all the skin shadow layers into one and applied the noise grain effect to it. You can find the noise grain effect in the adjustment icon. Swipe right to adjust the grain size. And there you have it, your shading now has the noise grain effect. Then, apply this to the rest of the shading layer. What's left is the chromatic aberration effect. But before that, you need to merge all the layers into one single layer. After that, duplicate the all-in-one layer. Then, go to the adjustment icon and select chromatic aberration. This might only work for Procreate users, but choose perspective and swipe right and left to apply the effect. Finally, erase the parts where you don't want the chromatic aberration effect to be visible, like the eyes and the center of the face. This is why it's important to duplicate the layer before applying the effect. And voila! Here's the result of my copy painting study. And here's a side-by-side comparison with the original. It's not 100% identical, but it's good enough to understand the artist's thought process while painting this, and that's very important. Now, it's time to put everything we've learned together and create our own OC. I will recreate this OC of mine but in Mika Pikazo style. Let's see if I can apply what I've learned. But before that, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community with thousands of classes led by industry pros. Whether you're into illustration, design, or animation, Skillshare has got you covered. With summer school breaks, it is the perfect time to embark on a learning journey and elevate your skills to the next level. Here, you can easily find classes you like such as anime drawing, and they are all suitable for beginner or intermediate level. I'm excited to learn how to make webtoons this summer with Pluvia's Drawing Webtoons, from planning to publishing class. It's for people who dream of making colorful comics with their own characters and stories. In this class, you get to learn how to plan panels, draw characters, and portray their feelings. Join me on this learning journey this summer. The first 500 people to click the link can get 1 month free trial of Skillshare. Let's start with a rough drawing. I think drawing a character in a playful pose can really show Picazo's style, so I'm going with someone holding glasses. You can find plenty of ideas on Pinterest. For the second draft, I made the rough sketch neater by drawing clearer lines. Also, I felt there was too much empty space around the neck, so I added a headphone and an earring. Then, my next step is to place the focus on the face. To do this, I'm going to add lots of details to the drawing all except the face. It wouldn't be a Mika Pikazo art without the band-aids and hair clips, so I added plenty of them. This follows the pattern or repetition technique we talked about before. Then, I applied the fill in the frame composition technique by enlarging the pose. Here, I fixed the body and clothes and made a rough color sketch. My character has red hair, so I began with that. As for the colors, I used yellow-green, blue-violet, and red-orange, but with a playful twist. Instead of blue-violet, I used red-violet. After that, I filled in the rest with neutral colors like black for the clothes. Next up is the line art. There's not much to say here, just make sure to vary the thickness and erase some parts of the lines. Then, fill in the local color. If you look closely, the chest feels more crowded now because the headphones are bigger. So I changed the clothes to something that gives off a spacious feeling. It's annoying, I know, but that's how art works. You have to fix and adjust as you go. I followed the same steps I learned from the previous copy painting study. First, I applied the base color. Then, I added the shadow layer, terminator layer, and highlight layer if needed. But I made a change. I divided the shadow layer into two, the soft shadow layer and the hard shadow layer. It's easier for me to work with 2 shadow layers instead of 1 because it gives me more room for error. I added halftone effects to the band-aids and glasses, and then touched them up a bit to give them that pop graphic style. I kept working on the painting by adding more details, like hair strands and earrings, which I simply copied from the copy painting study. Please don't judge me. I'd be drawing for 10 hours straight if I did it from scratch, so forgive me if I cheated a little. Once the painting is finished, we can finally move on to the last step. Adding effects and filters. I applied the hard mix effect to the clothing, hair, and glasses. I don't really like the result of it. I wonder if I have to use Clip Studio Paint like Picazo sensei to achieve the same result. After that, I added the halftone effect to the edges of the drawing. Next, I applied the noise green effect to all the shadow layers. Then, I blurred the edges and added the chromatic aberration. Finally, I erased the parts where I didn't want the chromatic aberration effect to show, like the eyes and the center of the face. And voila! Here's the result of my Mika Pikazo style OC. What do you guys think? While it's true that Mika Pikazo's art style is really unique and makes you want to completely mimic her style like her trademark halftone effect and heart mix effect. However, I don't think that's the right approach. Instead, you should ask yourself, what can I transfer to my own art style? For me personally, my biggest takeaway is definitely the bonus of Mika Pikazo's color choices. What's yours? Comment down below. If you found this video helpful and gained a lot of value from it, please like and share it. Tell me in the comment section below which professional artist you'd like to see me study next and what aspect. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.